was only a boy when I first heard about the Nightriders. In a voice a little above a whisper, Roy told us what his pa and brothers had told him. It was a little overcast that day. My friend Bobby, Roy, and I had gone fishing by Reelfoot Lake, being all stealthy-like 'cause old man Harris had warned everyone not to come here in his land to fish. But we knew if he caught sight of us, we could outrun him. He couldn't catch us even if his bum leg had grown wings. We were faster than a jackrabbit on steroids and knew the woods like the back of our hands. Been living there all our lives. Now what Roy told us that day about the many killings and whippings by the Nightriders sent shivers up and down my spine the whole time he was telling it. For the first time in my young life, I thought I knew fear. But later, I found out that what I was feeling that day wasn't even close to what fear was. 'Cause a few years later, I saw that evil does exist in men, and then and there, I knew fear. Here's my story about the Nightriders of Reelfoot, Tennessee. Welcome to another episode of This Happened Here. On this channel, we take you around the US and beyond to bring you true, captivating, and historical stories that a lot of us don't even know about. I sometimes tell these stories from a first-person perspective in the hope that my spin on them will make it even more interesting for you. If you like these stories and want to get them each time I upload, click the subscribe button and select the all option in the drop down. And like these videos so that I will know that I'm on the right track. If you can think of any of your family and friends who might find these videos interesting, go ahead and share them for me, please. Now come with us as we tour Reelfoot Lake and take in some of these amazing sights. I am your host, LT Bartek. I know I mentioned in the last video that I would be telling you about a story involving a father and son duck hunter, but that turned out to be not true, so no story there. But there is a story about a killing at the lake involving some Reelfoot Lake duck hunters. This story is contradictory, and I'm not comfortable telling that one because this case has still not been solved to some people's satisfaction, so I'll leave that one alone. But the two stories I'll be sharing with you today are: one, the dramatic and frightening way the Reelfoot Lake was formed, and two, the terrifying story of the Nightriders of Reelfoot, Tennessee. The Nightriders were about 100 men who started off as a group fighting against injustice, but who later became a group of killers and who terrorized the people of Reelfoot. Now first, here is a story of how Reelfoot Lake was formed. In the early 1800s, the Chickasaw tribe inhabited the area we now know as Reelfoot, Tennessee. They lived here in peace and farmed and fished to feed themselves. But then the white settlers came and saw all the natural resources and forcefully took the land from them. Soon there were 500 families of white settlers there, with the numbers growing constantly living in the area. But then in the winter, starting in mid-December of 1811, and ending in mid-March of 1812, a series of massive earthquakes changed these 15,000 plus acres to what we see here. The tremors were felt as far as Washington and even to Quebec City in Canada. It completely changed the ecosystem, making it unlike any other in the world. These earthquakes swallowed up a large part of the forest, which then was filled in by the Mississippi River. The first quake occurred in the St. Francis River area of northeast Arkansas. 5 weeks later, the second quake occurred several miles northeast of the first. Then 2 weeks later, the third and most powerful of the three destroyed the area further north of that, at the Little River port town of New Madrid, Missouri. This earthquake ran a course line starting at Cairo, Illinois, then traveled south through Missouri to Mart Tree, Arkansas, then making a branch to Reelfoot Lake, Tennessee. Because of the upheaval caused by the earthquake, a crack broke through the Mississippi River and overflowed its banks, and for 3 days it ran uphill and backwards, filling in the sunken land and cracks caused by the earthquake, expanding the lake. Today, a lot of the water remains, covering over 23 square miles, and though some parts of the lake are bottomless, most parts are only about 5 feet deep. But though these areas may be shallow, it is still very dangerous because of the weed growth and the sunken drifts that can entangle swimmers. This lake was even filmed in the movie U.S. Marshal. It features the swamp scenes. Watch.
Prints from the crime scene match yours.
You have to believe me. I did not do what they said I did. Oh no. Still got one prisoner unaccounted for. Mark Roberts.
A daring escape. A cross-country manhunt. No one had seen anything like it.
I have.
It is said that Reelfoot Lake has one of the largest wintering populations of bald eagles outside of Arkansas, and the yearly return of the eagles has become a major event. People flock there every year to see their return. I was a little bummed that we were too late in the year to see these awesome birds. There are approximately over 100,000 ducks, 6,000 Canadian geese, and 254 species of birds that visit the lake each year. Have you noticed the cypress trees growing there? I've never seen the roots of trees such as this. Interesting, isn't it? There are also many frogs and turtle habitats, ducks, geese, and semi-tropical birds like the brown pelican and the Florida snake bird in the area. Then there are pigs and boars, fishes like bass, crappies, perch, and the snouted buffalo fish. This area is known as one of the best fish and game spots in the country. While we were there, one fisherman told us a funny story. No one was hurt, though that was why I thought it was funny. He told us that there are times when snakes come out in abundance and you don't want to be there at that time. He said that one day his uncle went out in his boat to do some fishing and a slither of snakes just hopped out of the water and into his boat. He got so scared that he pulled his gun and shot the bottom of the boat out. The way he told it was so funny, and I was laughing so hard I didn't hear the rest of the story. Sorry. You know, it is always so nice to meet people out on our travels. They always help to make the experience so much more for me. Anyway, now for my next story. This is the true story of the Nightriders of Reelfoot, Tennessee, as told by my fictitious character, Jim. This all started with a man by the name of James Harris. The year was 1870. Mr. Harris had himself some money and started buying up all the land around the lake. Then in 1899, he came out on the town square and warned everyone to stay off his lake. And if he caught anyone fishing on this lake, they would be shot on sight. Furthermore, he intended to drain the lake and farm the land. Menfolk didn't take a liking to all that hot hair coming out of his pie hole, and so they filed a lawsuit blocking Harris from carrying out his plans. The folks fought this all the way to the Supreme Court, and that did it. He had to forego his plans to drain the lake, and he couldn't stop anyone from fishing that lake. He didn't take a liking to that, but there was nothing he could do about it. Everything was good for a while. Then in 1803, Harris died, leaving all his land to his son, Judge. He was an apple from his father's tree for sure, and he came out saying that folks using the lake needed to pay him to use it like it was his or something. He even created a company called the West Tennessee Land Company for this purpose. This again angered the town folk, and after hearing what was happening in southern Kentucky between the tobacco farmers and the American Tobacco Company, they decided to do something similar. Because over there in Kentucky, the tobacco farmers were fighting for a better price for their crops, because the buyers had formed a trust that was controlling the market and paying little or nothing for crops. So this man Felix Ewing and brothers Joel and Charles Ford formed themselves an organization to fight this trust, gathering over 1,000 farmers. Those that didn't join were paid a higher price by this trust. This was done to dismantle the organization. This angered the newly formed organization guys, and the plan was set to destroy these farmlands and get rid of the trust. So they would put on black hoods and ride their horses under the cover of night and attack the tobacco company property and farmers who were siding with the trust. This was done to bring about some change to the pricing for their crops, and it was working. As horse riders and doing their deeds at night, that gave them the name the Nightriders. Seeing those acts being done up there in Kentucky, the fishermen decided to do something like that. They ended up with up to 100 men making Nightriders raid against the West Tennessee Land Company and all who were associated with them. These attacks went on for 7 months, and in that time they carried out some evil deeds. They burned privately owned docks. They whipped George Wayne up there for saying something smart about the Nightriders. They even whipped Miss Emma Johnson because she was fixing to divorce her Nightrider husband, Joe Walker. But what will forever keep me up at night was what I witnessed over in Kentucky. My big brothers, Jimmy and Lucius, was taking over the long runs to the market in Kentucky for Pa. And after months of me begging to go with him, he finally asked Pa if he could take me. Pa said it was okay with him if it was okay with Ma. I'd already been working on Ma, buttering up and doing all sort of chores just to get her to say yes. Soon I was on the wagon heading to Kentucky with my brothers. But things took longer than it was supposed to, and we were caught out at night. This sometimes happened to Jimmy and Lucius, and they would just hunker down for the night and camp somewhere along the trail before heading home in the morning. So that night it was business as usual for them, but soon we wished we hadn't. We was camped just outside of town, just on the outskirt where the dark-skinned folks lived. Jimmy made dinner and we talked for a bit, but as soon as we were about to get some shut-eye, we heard hoofs approaching. It sounded like thousands. And Jimmy gathered some dirt and threw it on the dying fire before they spotted it. We ran and hid in the bushes. Jimmy told me to cover my eyes, but I was too scared I wouldn't see my death coming. That, and I really wanted to see these Nightriders, though I was about to piss my pants. So I peeked. Lord knows I peeked, and I shouldn't, because I seen the Nightriders pull up at the dark-skinned man's house and pull him and his wife, along with his little daughter and baby, out of the house. As far away as I was, I could hear them screaming. Then I heard the shots. My ears rang, but we kept silent. After shooting the family, they rode off back into the night. Jimmy told me to stay still, but I made a fuss and he just gave up and told me to follow, but to stay close. We ran to the family laying in the dirt. By the time we got there, they were dead. The man, whom we found out later was Dave Walker, because I heard Pa telling Ma that the Nightriders had killed him and his family because someone told them that Mr. Walker had insulted a white woman and had pulled a gun on a white man. Tennessee officials paid no never mind, but the governor of Kentucky did, and sent out a decree that he would pardon anyone who would shoot and kill any Nightrider. Then all hell broke loose, and that lasted for 2 weeks. The Tennessee officials didn't make a move to stop the Nightriders until October 19, 1908, when the West Tennessee Land Company attorneys Rankin and Taylor were dragged from their hotel room and taken into the bushes. Rankin was hanged from a tree and shot. But Taylor managed to run away and hid in the lake. When the governor of Tennessee, Malcolm Patterson, heard of this killing, he finally called in the National Guard to restore order. The National Guards, working with hundreds of volunteers, rounded up 50 Nightriders. In January 1909, a jury found 8 Nightriders guilty and sentenced 6 of the 8 to death. However, the Tennessee Supreme Court later overturned these convictions because of the manner in which the judge had chosen the jury. The men were never tried again, but the Nightriders never committed another crime in Reelfoot Lake area. In 1914, the state of Tennessee purchased Reelfoot Lake and much of its shorelines. A law was passed declaring the lake public domain, which means people can fish there regardless of who owns the shoreline. Today, the lake and much of its shoreline are public property. People fish, hunt, and sightsee on and around the lake at places such as Reelfoot Lake Wildlife Refuge and Reelfoot Lake State Park. Well, that's my story, and this is Jim, signing out. You all come back now, you hear? Well, that is that, folks. If you enjoyed this story, let me know by clicking the like button and subscribe if you have not done so as yet. And go ahead and share this with those who you think will like it as well. Remember, I upload a video every week, so look out for that. Also, remember to love yourself and others, and I'll catch you on the next one. Love you. Bye.